Yes.
Okay, and Nathan, can you try and reach out to Joan to see if she can join us? Okay, if you could pull that up on the screen. I hope to vote this out within the next 15 minutes. David, I would like you to walk us through the changes that you see we talked about very quickly. And there was one question that I had that I sent to, I think, everybody. I just need some clarification on what we decided yesterday on it. And Joan has written, I think, a similar question. So but we don't need to go through the whole bill again, David, but where you think, I'm going to let you lead us.
Sure. Good morning, David Hall, Legislative Council. The changes are in highlights. You'll see the title of this section of law is just sort of a generic title, and the language has been changed throughout. For instance, here, so this generically charged ACCP with coming up with, a program that still has all the same substantive requirements, but the naming, the marketing, all that stuff can be left up to them. So I didn't flag every place I changed capital P to lowercase p, but that's throughout. And then the next piece, moving down to 4, how about we save this one for last, because this is the question you referred to. This is the wage threshold for the 2 different types of workers.
Okay.
Let me skip ahead to section 3 here on this report. I added this language. I'll let you read it.
What page are you on, David?
I apologize. I am not sure. Page 6 of 7. I've skipped ahead to section 3.
Okay.
So this is just, essentially asking the agency to come back and talk about this question about residency, second homeowners, third homeowners, period of time, whether you rented or owned. I think everybody knows what it's about, but just to memorialize that you had that issue flagged and they should come back with a discussion on it. Remember that
necessary changes, or should it say they're recommended changes?
Up to you.
I like
recommended.
recommended.
Yeah, I agree. And third home, the thought of a third home is making me apoplectic.
Right. And also on line 11, including any residency requirements or further changes. I don't want them necessarily to be limitations.
Right.
Okay. We got those things.
Okay.
I'm going to jump ahead to the appropriation. So it's $1 million as you requested. It's for grants pursuant to section 2. And then, so here in subsection B, I look back at some other programs and it seems like the standard amount for administration is 6%. I did throw that in here. I'm happy to take it out if you prefer. But that seemed to be sort of the general rule of thumb. And then I added in B2 the efforts concerning marketing and targeting.
So my question on B1, is this commonplace? I mean, if we didn't put this in, could they spend 20% on administration, or would they not be able to spend anything? And is this going to be something?
I think in the absence of direction, it's not clear. There's no limit. I mean, they sort of have the inherent authority to implement programs, but, I guess it's debatable whether they, obviously you have the power of the purse. The executive branch can't just spend money on its own without a legislative appropriation and some sort of direction On the other hand, they have to be able to administer and execute the laws. So there's sort of that inherent authority in the executive branch. I won't say every new bill has a reference to the cost of administration, but I'd say more have them than not, from at least from I looked at from the past few years. So it's up to you.
Okay, so I'm interested in hearing Senator Brock's opinion because he's going to have to bring this bill into appropriations. One approach may be to strike this section and just explain we toyed with that idea. If you want to put that in and at what percent, you can do that, but we thought we would just leave it open-ended.
Well, I guess the issue of the 6% is whether the department has anything to say, is that a reasonable amount? If you have 6% of $1 million, you're talking about $60,000, and is that enough to do the kind of marketing as well as administration that they think they need to do?
Yeah, I think we could do with some input there, but that may have to be fine-tuned in the House.
Yeah, I mean, we need to, obviously, we're going to need to market this, and I don't know what it'll cost to market, and I would hope that they've got a marketing department. They ought to be able to tell us, will it need any more administrators than they have right now, since essentially they're doing the program now? And I would expect not.
Right. So, I mean, would one approach be to be silent at this point? And
well, I think it's going to come up in approach, though.
Right, but bring it up, actually affirmatively bring it up in appropriations. Maybe you'll have more information at that point and say, if you see, David says that, more bills than not presently are doing this. I'm used to not seeing this kind of stuff in a piece of legislation and holding them accountable at some point if they go crazy with not getting money out the door to grants. I don't know. Is Joan with us? Did she join us at all? No, I guess not. So I don't know. I don't know what.
I mean, I could do it either way. Having a number in there is probably helpful, but
we don't know what the number should be.
Yeah, in a way, I would not leave it in and let the House flag it as a House issue that they need to address or not. We didn't address it with the first bill on remote workers, did we?
No, we didn't. So
and look at, we got millions of dollars worth of promotion through that article. Not that
so
we'll
we've got
B1.
If we drop B1 but keep B2 in,
right?
How's that?
Yeah, I think that would be good.
Yeah, and it could change. We'll have some time. I mean, they're probably going to strip all of this anyhow until the big bill, but hopefully
just grammatically. And B, I wonder if grants to programs to communities that are unrepresented.
Okay. Is it still a small B or is it now an A, David?
Well, this part is subsection B. The A is the money itself.
Okay, I couldn't see. Okay. So now we go back to the main. Oh no, you want to go down to the bottom here? No, that's just the name of the title. Okay.
So the last piece, the last issue, as the chair indicated, is above. It is the issue of the wage threshold. So let me try to drop this down so you can see it all in one place. So the way that I reworked this was to have sort of the general rule, the baseline be 160% of state minimum wage. And then there are two deviations from the standard. It's 140% of state minimum wage in these two cases. The first is for the relocating worker, and that is where the employer is located in an LMA with below average employment. And then the second exception is for the remote worker, and that is for the remote worker who takes up residence in a Vermont LMA with lower average employment. That's what I thought I heard yesterday.
I like it. It'll be just as much fun as explaining school funding to a group.
I'm
You
glad
know.
you can take joy from it.
No,
We
I
have
think
to
what we agreed to, and that makes sense.
Okay, well, your memory is better than mine. My only question is what we had agreed to. So this is, if that's what we agreed to, then I think that's the best we can do on this.
Yeah,
Okay,
and it's not the last time we will see it.
right. Okay, so that goes through all the changes. Good, Bill. Senator Brock, do you want to move to amend the bill as we have on the?
I will so move.
Can someone tell me the draft number?
It's gonna be 6.1. Yes, that's correct.
Senator Brock has moved to amend S62 as in draft 2.1, David, is that right?
6.1.
6.1, excuse me. Any discussion? If not, we'll just take a show of hands vote on this one. All in favor, say aye.
All right,
Okay. Senator Brock, you want to move the bill as amended?
I will move the bill as amended.
Okay, take a roll call on this. Senator Ram?
Yep. Senator Ballant,
Yes.
Senator Brock,
Yes.
Senator Ram, yes. Senator Clarkson.
Senator Clarkson, yes.
I don't,
Yes,
it's out of alphabetical order on mine for some reason. Senator Sirotkin.
yes.
I don't know why that happened. Maybe because
And
Hey, it's okay.
Senator Brock has graciously agreed to report this bill. You have to connect with Senator Bloomer, just telling him that we amended S62 and you will be the reporter and the vote was 5-0. Send him an email and you should be all.
Now, we don't have, in sending him the email, we don't have to send him a copy of the amended bill at that
I
point.
think
do we?
I think David will take care of,
I'm assuming that.
or David and Keisha will take care of that part, but they need to hear from the reporter what the vote was,
Okay,
that we voted it favorably.
all right,
And
that's fine.
I'm sure this will go to appropriations, so you got plenty of time to explain that section.
Senator Sorokin, are you still looking to hear from Joan Goldstein?
Too late. No, the answer is no. Thank you. And thank her. Okay,
And tell her how we voted. Yay.
okay, we're gonna move to S79. Nathan, can you connect with, if possible, with Becky Wasserman and tell her
Yes.
and ask her if we have something we can vote on and take 5 minutes at the end of this morning? Someone told me that Senator Ballin, you had to leave, right?
I have to leave about 1:45.
Okay, well, we'll probably hold open the vote if that's important to you. But I'd
Yeah.
like to at least preliminary get the project-based TIF bill out as well. So so Nathan, if you find her and she's got it ready, let me know. We might interrupt what we're doing and Senator Ballin may still be here and we'll just dispense of that one as well.
Great.
Okay, Senator Clarkson, my leader on S79.
Hardly. It is a fabulous team. A reporter could never have as fabulous a team as what we have. We have a great draft. It's draft 2.1, which is up on our website. And maybe we will, maybe David will put it up on the screen, but it's up on our website. And we have three, and correct me if I'm wrong, team, we have three things to clarify in this draft. One is we've addressed, Randy, we've addressed the privacy issue. Just want to flag we've addressed the privacy issue and who this registry is available for and how people access it. We've addressed an issue raised by the bankers about whether this is subordinate, how this is subordinate to other mortgages in the VHIP area. And we also have added the VHIP money. So perhaps I think we're in pretty good shape on the bill. Other than that, correct me if I'm wrong. Are there other decision points we have yet to make? I don't think so. I think those are the decision points that okay, I don't see a general up and down.
Well, I guess I'm not sure I fully focused on what you just said, but on VHIP, are we going to talk about what the VHIP program has
Yes.
done and
Good-
what it's
good point.
proposed to look like, in addition to just the amount of money?
Yes, absolutely. VHIP is in and now has been in for the last draft, but let's walk through VHIP as just the rental. We have agreed that the homeownership piece with the revolving loan fund, we have not had time to take testimony on. That will be addressed in the House. I think we're open to it. At least I'm very open to it. And but I think we just won't have done it justice if we try and deal with it now. So we have agreed to not deal with that, and that we will, because it's got lots of actually complex pieces in it. So let's go through, once we address the privacy piece and the registry, let's look at all of VHIP, including the money and the subordinate piece on the way. Is that okay?
Okay.
Great. So David, do you want to take us, and then we can have Sarah and Sean address the privacy piece and frame it up once we just take a peek at the language. I think the language is on page 16 of the draft on the website. David, do you want to put it up, or should we just keep faces and have people pull it up on their separate devices?
Senator, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to let the committee know that Becky Wasserman is here.
Oh, great.
But perfect point to vote this bill out.
Sorry. Yeah.
She wrote me something saying it was in editing. I don't know what that means, of editing to get the latest draft done so we can refer to something. Becky, are you there? We're going to go back to S33 very quickly. Hi, Becky.
Hi. So the draft is done. I'm just sending the latest version through editing one more time. There weren't many changes, so I don't expect that they'll be changing anything, but I just wanted to note that if you're voting it out now, it won't be the edited version.
Okay. So you want to pull it up and just briefly walk us through the decisions we made and where they lie, and then we'll move to a vote. I'm sorry, Senator Clarkson, but this just makes sense to do now.
No, it's fine. We need to vote this baby out.
Is the latest draft on the web? Or should I pull it up? I just don't know if Nathan had posted it yet.
What number is it? We can look.
If you could pull it up, it would be easier probably.
Okay.
for me.
Yeah.
And will the draft number stay the same once it's through editing? Okay.
Yes, so it's draft 1.3. Sorry, I'm just bringing it up in my own.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
have it here.
We don't. It's 1.2 in
Two
on
is
the.
one line.
Everything's slow today. There must be a lot of competition.
Okay, let's see. I can zoom in for you. Oop, that might be too much. Is that a good?
Good sizing.
Okay. So Becky Wasserman, Legislative Counsel. This is draft 1.3 of the amendment to S33. So I can just go over, there are 4 changes from the last draft you saw earlier this morning. The first change is in the definition of project. So I've added back in a cap on the size of the project. So the total debt ceiling is not more than $5 million. I also just had to change the structure of this definition to now that I added in that cap. So it's all the same language except for that $5 million cap in there. But it also has the substantial public investment over and above the normal municipal operating or bonded debt expenditures. that the public improvements are integral to the expected private development, and then it has the four criteria, one of the four following criteria that has to be met. So that's all the same. The next change was, this is in two places, but the definition of TIF project zone referred to areas within one or more active designations approved by the Vermont Downtown Development Board, or it also referred to industrial parks, and I've removed that definition I've removed the reference to industrial parks here. Subsection B is a change to the length of the pilot program and the number of projects that can be approved. So this is now 5 years and rather than 3, and projects are up to not more than 15 projects rather than 6. And this is the number that passed out of your committee last year. And then the other change again is just this reference to industrial park under the eligibility. So the project just has to serve one or more active designations approved by the downtown board, and industrial park is not mentioned here.
I will say that I believe this will be taken up in the House and they could discuss this more fully. I don't think this is that the industrial park issue is going away, because there are one anyway, but I'm happy to chat about it with the House.
I like your enthusiasm. I hope we can get it through the Senate.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the last change that I made is on at the top of page 11 about when the creation of the project occurs. So I changed it to when the municipal body votes to approve the tax increment financing project plan, rather when they vote to approve the debt. So this lines up with what is done with TIF districts.
Okay.
And those were the 4 changes, and I've just highlighted them here, but if you vote it out, I can take all those highlights out.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any comments from the committee at this point? Okay, Senator Rahm, would you like to move S30, the amendments to S, it's a strike all, correct?
Yeah,
I believe it is.
It's a strike all, and it's draft 1.3.
Would you like to move the amendment to S33?
sure. I move that we amend S33 as a strike all with draft 1.3. Do you want to voice vote or show of hands?
Yeah, we'll do a voice vote. Any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it was 5-0, but we don't have to record that. Senator Rahm, would you like to move the bill as amended?
Yes, I move S33 as amended favorably out of the committee.
Okay, we'll do a roll call on this one. Any discussion before we take the vote?
Good
My
work.
only discussion is, wow, this takes a really, really, really long time. Here we are again on something that we've tried to do for so many times. So let's hope this is the charm.
Just the first step, Madam President Pro Tem.
Yeah, it's good. This is good work.
Okay, so the clerk will call the roll.
Senator Ballant,
Yes.
Senator Brock,
Yes.
myself, Senator Rahm, yes. Senator Clarkson,
Yes.
Senator Sorokin.
Yes.
And apparently that's the order, Allison, that we put it in from the beginning because you're vice chair. So unless you wanted to go back to alphabetical, Nathan told me.
It doesn't matter to me as long as I'm on the list and get to vote. I don't care where the hell I am.
And Senator Rahm has graciously agreed to report this bill. It'll be a while before that happens.
Yep, right. And that's a vote of 5-0-0 out of committee.
Right.
Great.
Okay. So you know what,
Good work.
it's all in your hands, Keisha, at this point in terms of sending things off to Legislative Council and to Bloomer.
Can I quickly ask, being the reporter in the Senate, does that mean if it comes up in another committee, you may or may not be asked to come present it to that committee, or
You will be.
you will be?
Well, generally you will be, but Senator Brock and I are in that committee, so
Right.
depending what Senator Cummings wants to do.
Yeah, I won't be offended if you two take that on.
So,
Remember,
Well, we might be
I'm
offended.
going to Senate Finance.
Are you offering to carry all our water in finance for the S79 too?
We'll see. We'll see.
Let me go get it scanned.
Okay.
Hey, at least we haven't committed on one, so that's good.
Okay.
Okay, may we turn back to 79?
Please do. We have about a half hour, I think.
Right. Okay, so our first edition, and are we going to share, David, do you want to share a screen or do people want to just look at it? It's on page 16 of draft 2.1, which is, I believe, up on the website if people want to look at it. Is that okay?
Happy to share my screen if you'd like. Is that what you
Well,
prefer?
I
Up to you
think why don't you just go through it quickly by sharing your screen, and then we can have Sean and Sarah speak to it.
Okay, so I'm gonna jump straight to
Page 16.
page 16, the highlighted language in subsection D.
You want to lead us through it, or do you want?
Well, if everybody's had a chance to read it, I guess I don't know what to say. It's good enough. I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure what the committee wants as far as privacy goes. I mean, you know, I took a stab last night at trying to tie this a little more closely to specific exemptions that currently exist in the Public Records Act. I mean, so the way that these exemptions usually work is that you would say, you know, X whatever data information record is exempt from public inspection and copying pursuant to 1 VSA 317. And then there's a long list of, you know, particular exemptions. And some of those probably already apply here. I think Sean and Maxwell or the department did a good job of giving you a flavor of what the scope of the act is and what those exemptions are. But what's tripping me up is not necessarily the substance here, but rather, you know, to what extent, how much of this do you actually want to be public? Because, you know, part of the underlying thrust of this is to create a record or registry of rental housing. And when people start talking about, you know, it'd be great during Irene events or other things to know where the housing is, then that tells me that in some cases that sometimes you actually want this to be public information. And, you know, so it's kind of alludes to that in lines 6 through 8 that, you know, the department may have some discretion to release this information to further the public good. That's a nebulous construct. And I don't know to the extent to which, you know, the committee as a policy decision wants this to be disclosed by the department. You know, what are the circumstances, how much of the information, etc. So it may be for now, for crossover, you know, fine, and we continue to work on it, or you may want to try to refine it here. It's up to you.
Well, what I'm concerned about in this in particular is the disclosure of information that could be used by telemarketers, by robocallers, by voyeurs, by domestic abusers, or by anybody else who can do it. Now, I had Damien drafted some language for me on privacy in another bill that might be helpful. And what that does is excludes the release of telephone numbers, it excludes the release of email addresses, and it removes mailing addresses, not necessarily it allows for mailing addresses to be released, but not residence addresses. So that's perhaps another approach where it's specific in terms of what's excluded.
Well, but in an emergency, I'd go to David's point, which is in a declared emergency, we may need some of this release because we may need to be in touch with landlords fairly spit spot. I mean, you know.
Well, I would just argue the case that, you know, even in an emergency, I don't think it's anybody's business whether or not I've got a rental property, and to be solicited by the state or anybody else regarding renting it, I think goes beyond what we gotta be doing.
I think that's precisely part of why we need this. So actually, maybe Sean and Sarah, who drafted this, can explain what their thinking was behind this at the moment. And then we could chat further about it, or I think this makes it very clear, Randy, it is not open for commercial use. So I think your concern is covered here.
So I'd be happy to weigh in on some of the thought process. This is Sean Gilpin from the Department of Housing and Community Development, and we did unfortunately it was a bit late in the game, but did share with the committee a memo that was put together in large part by the department and our general counsel Max Krieger that David alluded to a moment ago. And I think it's important for the committee to recall that the Public Records Act itself allows for information to be made available when it is needed to review the action of a governmental official. So it's not such that we need to make public. For instance, if a robocall solicitor or even somebody seeking public office wanted to get the list of landlord phone numbers that was collected by this, or is proposed to be collected by this registry, simply asking for that doesn't give them the right for us to disclose it if it doesn't have a nexus between some decision that was made by a public official. So I feel like this language is probably not even necessary to address the concerns that you've raised, Senator Brock, but happy to have it be in there as explicit that, just so that in the interest of having sort of everything in one place so that people understand that this is not, this is not a way that folks would be able to get the physical addresses of every landlord for whatever reason. It would be simply, it would be for our ability to collect this information to understand better about housing needs in various communities. We could, aggregate and make available some information when it comes to just general housing data. But I think there's generally I think there's often an expectation that the public records requests language allows for anybody to ask for anything at any time, and that's not actually the case.
Sarah, do you want to add anything to this?
Sure. I don't know if you had a chance to review the memo that we sent to you yesterday. I think it's really important to understand that almost all of this information we're asking for, with the exception of phone numbers and emails, is already publicly available. Several years ago, and I outline it in the memo that I sent you.
It's up on our website, the one that begins with the Vermont Housing Investment Program.
Every year, the tax department makes the property address, the landlord address, and a few other items publicly available. So today, you can go get a list of rental addresses. It's also available on the town by town basis in the grand list. Part of our issue is it's never been consolidated easily. So the information we're asking for, in addition to the property address and the landlord address, is the information that we're saying the department would not have to release, and that would be for public purposes. One purpose for the phone numbers, obviously, is for the Department of fire safety to have access when they need it. The one reason for the email is so that things like all of that landlord money and all of that repair money that you distributed this fall, we could easily get that information to landlords. And I think the work that the department did, DHCD, is saying that that does not get distributed to the consumer. That would be for the department's use and decisions as they need it for the various things. And again, I several senators actually, last time we processed bill, challenged it, and I easily went on and found that they own an apartment. So I think it's just important to understand that much of this is available now.
Right.
In terms of the consumer database, it's not easily available. Let me tell you that. You have to know how to download it, but it sits there. And so what I think we're offering here is just a refinement. As Sean said, we're not even sure it's necessary, but to make it clearer that there would be no expectation from the department to have to release this to consumers, and that the additional information we ask for, like name and phone numbers, not name and phone numbers and emails, they would not have to give. And I think it's important to point out that, and I had a long conversation with the Secretary of State's office, they in fact do release emails on their 80,000 businesses they have in their registry, some of which are rental properties, because emails are so easily changed. They're not, unlike a telephone number, which is more difficult to change. But we're not even suggesting that. I think we're just saying that it will be the department's discretion to use this as they need to for public programs.
Well, I'm glad to know where all this junk email I'm getting is coming from. I'll have a talk with Jim Condos about that. One of the questions that I've got, though, regarding this the rental housing registration is, are you going to collect the residence address of the landlord, assuming it's not an owner-occupied property, or are you collecting the mailing address? Because that's a significant difference.
Well, there was, from what we've laid out is the mailing address. I do know that one of the folks testifying that was more on the short-term rental piece recommended that we collect a physical address. That doesn't seem possible to me, and I don't think it's necessarily appropriate. Rental housing is a business. What's the business address? And we will ask that. Some businesses are private sole proprietors, some are LLCs, some are corporations. Whatever their business address is the address we would collect, not where they physically live, unless it happens to be the same place. But we'd be looking for the mailing address. Well,
there's a difference between mailing address and business address.
Well, it would be the address, again, and we can refine this, what the Secretary of State, they use a term called public address, and I'm not quite clear what that means, but it would be the address that the owner gives us. And in my work, usually when you say mailing address, it's the address, obviously, where they want to get mail, which may or may not be their physical address. Most cases,
I'm concerned, for example, about people who are victims of domestic abuse and who may decide that they want to use a post office box rather than the address in which they actually reside in order to maintain some privacy. That's my intent here.
And
well, we have no tenant. There's no tenant information on this, so this is only the owner of the building.
I realize that.
Yeah. So the owner of the building will tell us that he owns a building or she owns a building at 8 Maple Street, and then we will ask them how do we contact you? And they can either say 8 Maple Street or they can say post office box.
Okay, so
30.
mail address is the answer then.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, that's fine with me.
Right.
Can I just?
Any other? Yeah. Okay.
Well, this might just be a good time to broadcast the Safe at Home program, which the
Right, I'm aware of that.
maintains. Okay, so
I'm
as long as you can give people your preferred safe address, I feel like that's taken care of.
Great. David, you're concerned about the nebulous. Is there any reason on line 6 or 7 to at least allow for the opportunity? I'm happy to leave it in this form and let the House work on it further. But if we wanted to describe an instance when a municipality could access it in a declared emergency, is that, what do people feel about that? If David's feeling this is a little nebulous.
I don't mean nebulous in that. What I specifically mean is there's a lot of discretion. Department can give it to people if it's to further the public good. Well, I don't know what that means. And then also, it can't be disclosed to entities for solicitation without the authority granted by the department. Why should the department be able to allow this information for solicitation ever? I'm posing these questions based on what your discussion has been.
Yep.
So, and then the third sentence I think is, obviously they could do that. So it like I said, I think it's probably fine relative to what you all have been talking about. The issue I wanted to raise was specifically, now that it is all going to be consolidated in one place and it is one registry, and it's pretty easy to find, even though all of that stuff is available through other channels, every time, in statute, we create a compilation of information like this as a public record, there are general rules and there are exceptions, and it's sometimes good to specify where you want this to fall. But it sounds like you're mostly fine with it as it is, which is fine by me.
Any other thoughts? This was the work. This has been the work of the department with the Rental Housing Advisory Board, with Sarah and with Wendy with legal aid. So this is their best work on this and David's work. So I'm fine with it at the moment. But I'm open to our clarifying it in any way that, I just think that I think this gives some degree of confidence to people that this is not going to be generally public information other than what's already quite public, as Sarah has pointed out, and that the department will hold this with discretion and weigh disclosures for specific purposes, which we can either identify now, let the House identify, think about further, whatever. Okay, let's.
All right.
Yeah,
15 minutes. I don't need to raise any more stink there. I can move on to the next.
No.
Piece. I know you guys want to talk about VHIP, so I can just try to move us along to that.
Should we? Yep. VHIP is before the subordinate. Do you want to just quickly do the subordinate piece before VHIP?
I can. I mean, that's part of VHIP.
Okay. Well, then let's start.
I tacked it on to the very end, but
let's dive into VHIP then.
Okay. So let's really quickly,
it's on page 25.
I believe that is correct. So section 9 of the bill, page 25, creating the Vermont Rental Housing Investment Program. So this is just the rental housing piece. At this point, we do not have the revolving loan for purchases in this bill. This is just the rental housing piece. So the construct in A, again, same sort of concept you've been familiar with. It's a flow through DHCD through statewide and regional nonprofit housing organizations, give money to landlords to make improvements to rental housing to bring them, up to snuff online. There are some differences. You'll see on line 13, for instance, grants and forgivable loans to private landlords for rehab and weatherization. So the forgivable loan concept is a new one relative to what you've, reviewed in years past. And there is a distinction we'll see later. Whether you get a grant or a forgivable loan has some impact on what the requirements are for your tenants, right? So let me just hold that there. For eligible rental housing units, I've broken this into 3 categories. Non-code compliant, which means it doesn't comply with applicable building, housing, or health laws. 2, vacant, hasn't been leased or occupied for at least 90 days prior to date of application and remains unoccupied on award. Or accessory dwelling. The unit is an accessory dwelling unit that meets requirements in 4412. So those first 2 pieces, non-code compliant and vacant, those are consistent with the program as it most recently was proposed and as it came through the CARES piece. The concept of accessory dwelling is an addition. It's a 3rd category that is new to this proposal.
So under the existing program and this proposal, you can be either vacant or non-code compliant. You don't have to be both.
That's right.
Okay.
The way it started off way back when was that it had to be vacant or blighted.
Right.
And that sort of transformed over time to encompass non-compliant. And that is how the most recent versions and the CARES version have been, that you are not in compliance with applicable codes, whatever those are.
Okay.
But the accessory dwelling has been added and there's no requirement that it be in need in some capacity.
That's correct. It does not have to check any other boxes. It can qualify on its own.
So that is really strictly creating a new housing opportunity.
Can I ask where, maybe I haven't been focused, where this came from and the $6 million program that the agency ran with CARES funding, I guess? Have they been giving out grants to anybody who wanted to build an accessory dwelling?
So I'm happy to speak to that. So
Great, thanks.
As you know, we partnered with the home ownership centers, the 5 regional home ownership centers. Ultimately, it ended up being, I believe it was a $7.6 million program after final allocations. We left some of it to the discretion of the homeownership centers to address their regional needs. For instance, Chittenden County focused solely on vacant or blighted units or the creation of new units. So the creation of accessory dwelling units. Some other places, down in Wyndham, Windsor, they addressed some code non-compliance. In the Rutland area, the NeighborWorks of Western Vermont, the only code non-compliance were for significant structural issues. So for instance, a gentleman was trying to replace an electric stove and found out that the entire house had old knob and tube wiring that would not fit code and needed a $10,000 investment to not displace for, I believe it was 4 families. We addressed another example of code non-compliance that was kind of an emergency situation, which I think was actually in Windsor. A gentleman had a triplex and had a massive septic failure and didn't have the cash on hand in order to make that repair and would have had to displace those families. So we were able to stop that from happening during the pandemic. So it was up to a bit of the discretion of the homeownership centers as to which one of these categories or what proportion of the grants that they would administer fit into each of these categories based on the need in the area.
So maybe you'll get to this later. I have some concern with this section. I consider myself in some way the father of accessory dwelling units from 20 years ago, getting the first law passed on behalf of the elderly for in-law apartments. So I love accessory dwelling units, but I guess it seems to me like some very wealthy person in Chittenden County, my own county, can say, I want to convert my house and put an accessory dwelling unit here. I'm going to have the state pay 90% of the cost.
Certainly understood. And I think that From our perspective, some of the rationale behind the affordability covenants and the requirement to house somebody who was exiting homelessness in order to get the grant funding or keep a 10-year affordability covenant on the unit. In our minds, certainly we don't want to be, bankrolling, millionaires and billionaires who, could otherwise afford. But to create a new unit in Chittenden County that benefited, even for only 10 years, somebody at an affordable rate, seemed like a trade-off that caused us to add the accessory dwelling creation to the thought process of this program.
Could that have happened over the summer, and where'd you get the authority to do that?
There were in the CARES Act and in the act that created the rehousing recovery program, which was the CARES Act funded version of VHIP. It left a good deal of discretion to the creation of new units. We did require all the homeownership centers to request a waiver from us in the case where they were creating a new unit as opposed to addressing a vacant one or a code non-compliant. And honestly, we had weekly meetings where we discussed a lot of these situations and made determinations based off of some of the discretion of the homeownership centers about whether they thought it was a need. They were all overprescribed, so there was a focus on property owners who otherwise wouldn't be able to, not only a focus, there was a prioritization of property owners who would not otherwise be able to make the necessary investments to either keep the unit available or to bring it back online.
What percent, Sean, of the units that you did, and you can remind us of the number that the $7.6 million created, how many was it? Was 200 plus units?
There were, the most recent numbers I have were from a report the last week of February, and there are 206 units that have been completed entirely. We expect that by the end of this month, that number will be close to 250, and there's a couple stragglers that might take.
Great. So out of that number, how many were accessory dwelling units, and can you give us a profile of the people that took advantage of that?
I would say it was probably less than 5 accessory dwelling units. And I use that term pretty loosely. In some cases, it was a conversion of, what used to be summer cabins into full-time, small home residences, which we would consider sort of put under that category of accessory dwelling unit. But it was a very small, less than 2%.
And the affordability covenants went with them for 10 years, right?
In the CARES Act funded RHRP program, it was a 5-year covenant. And so we're actually expanding this
okay.
As David pointed out, either 5 years with a commitment to house somebody who's exiting homelessness or 10 years of simply affordability with the option of finding a tenant that wasn't referred by the homeless service providers.
Right.
So I want to be upfront with Sean and others, and I shared this with Senator Clarkson. It's not a turf issue for me. It's a separation of powers issue for me. We're effectively establishing a new program, and we had to get money out the door over the summer. And I support VHIP. You all know that. I was very taken by the Rutland situation. I want to do this, but we introduced this bill without this. I understand that it's a good thing and it helps politically to get this through, but we're setting the guidelines in perpetuity here, or so much, for a new significant program. And in my mind, we really haven't had a lot of testimony on how the program went over the summer and what's being proposed here. And now we have 2 hours to put our stamp of approval. My discussion with the House is, I was begging them, can you do this? We don't have the time. They said no, and Senator Clarkson convinced me that we could do this. But now I feel on the VHIP piece that we're running out of time. We could spend weeks on establishing a $3 million program. And I don't even know all the details of what happened this summer. It may be my fault. I haven't read reports or whatever, but I'm expressing my frustration here. And Tom Stevens, I said, just get us something and we'll work on it and get it back to you. So I'm not sure that we should be getting into all these details with an hour and 15 minutes left on this program.
So if you are on the rest of the program, we have passed already and taken, and we can bring Senator Rahm up to speed on this, but the rest of us have looked at the rest of it pretty fully before and have been enthusiastic supporters of it.
But we haven't really heard about how it went. I mean, what were we going to give it, like $1 million, or the administration wanted $1 million at one point and it got cut. And then with the CARES money came $6 million, which is great. But I'm not saying no, I'm just expressing.
No, I know you're expressing your frustration, part of which is expressed at us and part of which isn't. So I think
it's a lot expressed at the House.
We know where it's directed, but for the sake of moving us through this, let's mark that as as an addition for further discussion. But maybe we could continue to go through this, because I think that is the only. Sean, correct me if I'm wrong. There are two major changes. One is the accessory dwelling addition, and the other is the size of the grant per unit. Is that correct?
I would actually argue that there is a change in the match requirements. It's double what it was for the CARES Act funding, and there's also a change in the affordability covenants, which is considered longer than what they used to be.
Right.
And the addition of a requirement that there be some interaction for the homeless, which was not a requirement in the version of this that passed through this committee in S-163.
Right. And the match is 20% now.
Correct.
Yeah, I like all of those changes, by the way.
Yeah, I think Michael, so why don't you quickly go through those, and so that Michael can be a little happier. So we're on page 26, and that you're going right into the meat of that.
Can I just do a time check?
Yeah, we're sort of at the end. Let's do what Senator Clarkson says, and maybe we'll go 5 more minutes. If people have to leave, that's fine. We'll pick it up tomorrow. I think we can get this done. I'm sorry I took up some time, but
that's okay. We've had other things bumping up against it. So why don't we just quickly talk, Sean, why don't you take us through the meat of the changes so that we can all be sanguine with them and weigh them?
Sure. So obviously the largest change is the increase in the grant amount, or grant or loan amount. It's based off of what we felt was successful for the RHSP. And actually, I think this allows for, the larger amount allows for lower income property owners to actually get things done. I think that the pilot programs that were run in the original version had first 8,000 and then 7,000. And I think one could argue that that small amount of money could probably be covered by a property owner. This is targeting owners who themselves might be financially struggling. It requires the 20% match, a weatherization component, which in most of these cases is not easy to, or not difficult to incorporate. We're talking about a lot of building shell and that sort of thing, upgrading broken appliances and the like. It also, as David laid out, it sets either a sort of 2 options for the property owner. You can either commit to 5 years of serving somebody who is exiting homelessness, and with referral from the coordinated entry lead organization, so sort of our head homeless service providers, or you commit to 10 years of renting at no more than the HUD fair market rent. And just to be clear, the 5-year is also requires the HUD fair market rent, but just the extra coordination with the coordinated entry organization serving homeless folks. Yes, and that's it also
What was the cap before the 30,000 this summer?
8.
8.
So we're gonna potentially, I mean, I can hear the arguments on both sides. We're gonna potentially serve less. Even if we get to 3 million, we're gonna potentially serve less people if we give out $30,000 grants versus $8,000 grants.
I think you'll serve fewer units with greater issues.
Okay.
And then they're actually
And possibly more landlords in actual need.
and they're the most recent additions have been, and this is in front of on David's screen right now, some income requirements for the incoming tenants, which were not existing in the previous. So we had set the rental rates, but had not necessarily required any income verification of the incoming tenants, but this provides for that. So that those units will not only be held at an affordable rate, but be rented to somebody who meets the affordability needs of low and moderate income.
Okay. All right. So is that a good stopping point?
Sean, was there anything else you wanted to quickly get in? Or is
Just the one other, and I don't want to steal David's thunder, the one other request was that the liens that are established in the covenants are subordinate to a mortgage. So we would collect their money later if something went into foreclosure.
right?
Even if the mortgage was secondary?
I'll let David speak to this particular language.
Let's not do this now. This is
Okay.
sort of a
We
legal issue. I guess I want to say, following up on my monologue there, is that I guess my feeling is that this may be a bill that we can vote out tomorrow with most of this in, but we may take further testimony on it in the following week, and potentially if we see a need for a floor amendment, we could do that. I think that may be one way to skin the cat.
Yeah.
So we really, Senator Clarkson, I think it's unfair to keep people much
No,
longer.
I'm very grateful. This is good. We needed to get through this and needed to people look at it.
I
This
just have
draft,
one other question for Sean. What's the difference between a loan and a grant? Who determines whether it's a loan, a grant, or forgivable loan, or?
So it basically, if one were to try to get out of the affordability covenant before the 10 years was up, they'd have to pay the money that they received back. So it would be.
So that's the only context in which it would be a loan. Otherwise, it's effectively a grant for everybody.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you, Senator Clarkson. Hi, Brian.
Brian, thank you. I
Good to see you.
apologize.
Good to
It's
see
good
you.
to have you on board.
We'll take this up again
Just a new
tomorrow,
face, same old story.
And
Yeah.
Senator Clarkson, I hope you'll work with whoever to get this to a final form, identifying I think it probably is identifying the issues, but if there's anything as a result of today to update it further.
We can have a huddle. I
Okay.
think you and I are meant to stay on this.
We are with
Right.
Nathan. Yep.
Right.
Okay.
So if we can have a huddle email, all you fabulous advocates.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And we'll probably see you all tomorrow.
At
And
what time we're doing this right away, I think at 8:30, right?
Nathan could probably pull that up.
Just so everybody knows. I believe we're starting with S79.
8:30.
Bright and shiny and bushy tail.
I'm a little, if we can change that, if you guys are available. What do we have for, UI has to get done.
We just voted out mini tips.
As a priority, I'm thinking we could probably use an hour for that. What do we have scheduled tomorrow, Nathan, for UI? When is that on for?
UI is currently scheduled from 9:40 till 10:30.
Okay, all right, we'll leave it like that. All right.